already is.
Try to behave here. Calling to order the regular meeting of the Stuart City Commission, 27 January 2025. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Rich.
Here.
Vice Mayor Collins.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Giobi.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
The invocation this evening will be provided by Pastor Jim Brocious, and will you then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Please stand.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's pray. Father in heaven, again, thank you for this beautiful day you've given us. Thank you for this beautiful area you've allowed us to live in. I do thank you for these ladies and gentlemen, and Lord, all of them that as they look to the future for us and make the rules and the regulations that are going to bring good things to us. So grant wisdom, grant strength. Pray for them and their families, Lord, that they would know your health and your peace. Pray for our city overall, Lord, that you would again make us a city of peace and joy and hope to all the residents and those around us. May you be exalted here, and may your joy overflow us. We thank you for all of this. In the wonderful name of our Lord Jesus, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Comments by city commissioners. Commissioner Reed, do you have any comments this evening?
Non-agenda items now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Giobi, do you have a comment this evening?
Yes, I do. I have been assigned to the Martin Arts Council. I went to my first meeting. I suggest that if you haven't been over there, it's right next to the courthouse, you should take a trip there. It's interesting. The building is historic in itself. I've left some pamphlets outside for everyone to grab on the Martin's Arts Council, and they have some events coming up that would be interesting to everyone. I think Martin County is celebrating a centennial, and the Martin Arts Council is doing a festival at Memorial Park on that day. I've also been assigned to the Martin County Business Development Board. I attended my first meeting. It was interesting, and it gave me an opportunity to let them get to know me and what my vision is for the building of the attraction of businesses to the county and the city. And so I want to just make a comment about our local reporter here. Hi, Keith. We are constantly being misquoted and not correctly portrayed in the paper. And I have to commend Keith. We had a conversation, and you quoted me correctly. I want to thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
I don't really have much to say, but I just wanted, again, to say that before we had this meeting, we had a joint meeting with the Community Redevelopment Board. And for me, it's a first in the history of Stuart that we have like 5 new members on the CRB. So we are hoping that the CRB will be there to help guide us as we look towards projects for the community redevelopment area and in our downtown and all around that area that's a part of that designation. And I just want to thank those who we just sworn in tonight to serve on that committee. And I also I know that Commissioner Giobi mentioned about the Business Development Board, and I think he's been here before, but Mr. Corbin from the Business Development Board is here tonight visiting us at our meeting, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Collins, do you have any comments? I just have brief remarks. We had the MLK Day, very chilly celebration. As I say, the parade is small in size but big in heart. I was happy to see Commissioners Reed and Giobi there for the first time, and Commissioner Clark and myself obviously were there. Despite that very cool weather, it did proceed through town, and we ended up at 10th Street, and I must admit I left early, so did it go as long as usual with
No, I think that they called for the mayor, and I happened to be there. And so I read the proclamation on behalf of the mayor, but,
I had to leave also.
that was very good. Good.
But it's, you know, it's nice the city can do that and share that with the community. And-
I-
Oh, I'm, okay.
Oh, I know that you're giving your thing, but since you mentioned Martin Luther King, it was also brought out to me by many people who were attending, and I think, I don't know if the press took note of this, but, that both the city and the county commissioners were out for that event on that day, and I think that people, were appreciative of that, to see their elected officials out.
The new sheriff was
Yeah,
there.
and the sheriff, yes. Thank you.
And finally, I'd just like to commend the Florida legislature. Sometimes government is best when it does very little. And they convened and adjourned their special session on the same day. So I think they deserve credit for that. Mr. Mortel, do you have any comments this evening?
Just a couple. First, we did have a joint meeting today, and we were talking about traffic, and it seems to be a very common conversation, especially this time of year when it's season and all of our friends from up north are here. I wanted to comment that there's been an ongoing long-range transportation plan by the MPO and FDOT, and to put it in perspective, Port St. Lucie's population in 2000 was roughly 84,000 people, and then in 2018, it was 180,000 people, and now it's about 247,000 people. So it doubled in population from 2000 to 2018, and we obviously feel that tremendously in our community. And from 2020 until 2024, they've added well over 40 or 50,000 people. They continue to grow, and the debate is whether or not Port St. Lucie will actually be larger than Miami. The Port St. Lucie urbanized area, which we live in now, is the urban area looked at from Washington, D.C., rather than, you know, they don't think of small little towns, or, you know, they don't get that close a focus. But the PZA currently has a population of approximately 522,000 people, and that's all of Martin County and roughly St. Lucie County. And they're projecting that by 2050 to 2060, that number is going to grow. And they've projected that Martin County will max out or reach its maximum development potential at about 190 to 200,000 people. The city of Stuart will be part of that number when we reach ours at about 24,000 people. The 190,000 people is really only adding, Martin County is roughly 170 now, so we're talking about 20,000 to 30,000 people being added to Martin County between now and 2055, which, even if you said the next 25 to 30 years. But the Port St. Lucie urbanized area is projected to be 900 to 950,000 people. So that will put us at 522 to 950, which is putting roughly another 400,000 people in our area. And when you think about where we live in Stuart, it's kind of ground zero, because it's it's the urban center for Martin County, it's the county seat, and if you're coming from Port St. Lucie and you want to go to the beach, you're either going to take Jensen Beach Boulevard, the 10-cent bridge, or East Ocean Boulevard, or Bridge Road, because the closest bridge other than that would actually be in Palm Beach County or in Fort Pierce. So, you know, no matter what we do, we need to plan on and take into consideration that, you know, realistically, Martin County isn't going to see much more in the way of growth, and neither is the city of Stuart, but we are going to see a significant number of people coming by way of whether it's daily or passing through or just as part of the surrounding community. I just found those numbers to be kind of amazing numbers and thought I would share them because it seemed enormous, but then when you look back and realize Port St. Lucie has doubled in half in the last 20 years, it's real. But that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda as published.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Clark and a second by Vice Mayor Collins. Any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none?
All in favor?
The agenda.
For the agenda.
Approving the agenda.
That's for public comment.
You're next. You're next, Mr. Hamilton.
All in favor?
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Do we have any comments from the public on non-agenda items?
Yes, Mayor. Miss Helen McBride?
Good evening, Ms. McBride.
Came for both
No,
meetings.
I've been here since 3:30. Helen McBride in Flamingo Avenue. And I did listen at the last meeting at the CRA and how concerned you all are about Seminole Alleyway and burying all those wires and that. I invite you all to ride down 10th Street from Palm Beach Road to Dolphin. Now, thank God we have Mr. Leggett and his crew. I don't know what we people in that area would do without him. I don't know who the construction company was there, but they were a construction company. They were digging. Now, it's all like all by St. Joseph's property. They dug a hole. They got a black one of those plastic wires where wires must have been on. Then down right where the school used to be, there was a hole, and we were all concerned. And one of my neighbors called Mr. Leggett, and God bless him. He came up and put a safety thing on there. There's a orange wire has been hanging from the pole way up, down, and kids are kids. We've got we really have 3 schools. We got St. Parker, daycare, and St. Joseph. And that wire is still hanging there. Now, I don't think our city workers should have to clean up after contractors. But this mess has been there for, I'd say, at least 2 years, if not more. And there's a wire hanging down on US 1 by the bowling alley, but that's a black wire hanging down, and that's been hanging there for years, too. I don't think my tax dollars and my wonderful workers and Mr. Leggett's department should have to go out and take care of these things. I don't know how you work construction, but there used to be you had to put a bond up. But we in my neighborhood, for the safety of our children, want something done, and we don't want to have our city workers do it. We want whoever made the mess, clean the mess up, and if they could be fined, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride, I think the orange wire is cable. I believe the orange wire is cable or is internet, and the black wire
Why
is
is it
probably
hanging
electricity.
down,
But
though?
no, I'll follow up with AT&T and Comcast to find out who it is and have it addressed. But do you know which intersection it's at?
Yeah, it's right, Pine School. You know where Pine School used to
Right,
be?
but I know on
Right-
10th, but I didn't
You
know
know,
that's-
I know you know what I'm talking about. It's right hanging there where you're coming out,
Between St. Joe's and the Pine School?
yeah, it's right there.
Okay.
Is that, and Mr. Leggett put
Across from Bonnie's house.
a thing with, one of those, over that, you'll see the hole where the, looks like cement and that. No, take a ride over, Mike.
will.
You used to go in that neighborhood. Come on over and get out of the car and walk like our kids do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride.
Miss Karen Yost Rudge?
Good evening. Thank you for your service. Karen Hall, Yost Road, 1701 Southwest Palm City Road. Even though Commissioner Giobbe spoke or joked about public comment first, I'm just going to say, and I'm going to keep saying it, took me 5 years to get an attorney, so I think the public comment should be first, just for you guys to defer to us. We pay you, and we pay for everything. And tonight wasn't bad, but many times people are sitting here for an hour, hour and a half, waiting to say their 3 minutes that they probably worked on all day. It's very hard to get up here and speak for some people, most people. So let's put public comment first, but I want to talk about the transparency. Martin County, when you send an email to them, you can see that. They post that. I don't know what their program is. I've spoken about this before. I really would like our city to do the same thing, just for transparency and to make the residents feel better. We have, we've had 300 people about Costco. Lately, it's been 600 people about the train, in favor of the train. Well, we should be able to see those 600 emails. It's not that we don't trust you, but sometimes we just don't trust you. So we need to see these emails. If you're getting 600 emails, we should be able to go and see what people wrote to you and how you responded. They do it at the county. I'm not sure why we don't do that. I think that's something, it can't cost that much, and I don't think people would be offended to pay that. So, and also, Mayor, they called for you at the Martin Luther King thing, and it was sad because they called for the mayor, the mayor wasn't there, there was a little grumbling where I was sitting. But yes, when you are the mayor of not you, but when one is the mayor, when you go to the Martin Luther King Jr. thing, please stay long enough. It makes the people feel better. They feel like maybe you don't care enough that you couldn't come and do the proclamation. Thank you, Commissioner Clark, for doing it. But yes, we'd like transparency. If you say you're getting 600 emails, I think I should be able to see them and how you responded. Just for transparency, so that we can all get along together. How beautiful it is when we dwell together in unity.
Hello.
Mr. Walter Lloyd.
Evening, Commissioners. Walter Lloyd, 150 Southwest Cabana Point. So, Commissioner Giobbe mentioned the responsibility of our media, and I'd like to take this moment on the public record to say that this morning, and maybe some of you saw it, it was announced that the Brightline letter request was going to come up in this meeting today. So probably some of us showed up to see what that was about. The other thing is that I saw in our local hometown news that I think is TC Poem mentioned or misquoted many of you in their representation of what went on in that meeting. It's like they give one side of the story, but they're not giving the whole side. You guys don't have anything to do with that, but I want the public to hear and probably pipe up, because we need responsible journalism. Mr. City Manager appropriately mentioned the growth surrounding us in this city, in this county, and the many people that are coming into the area are going to be traveling here. And I just want to point out that our Costco is almost ready to open up and really increase our pain, because everybody in the region that's growing exponentially is going to be coming here, filling up their car, and taking off and going home. I don't know what, other than the jobs in that Costco, we're benefiting. Maybe you could help us see that. We didn't see it during the presentation to bring the Costco. Maybe we could understand it now. The other thing is the train itself. Again, I don't think that I've heard too many opposed to having a train station. I have heard that it's ironic that a train is supposed to make the traffic less, so why are we complaining? Again, people are going to come from this exponential growth. They're going to jump on the train, they're going to go north and south, they're going to come back and go home. And that's traffic, and that hurts. So keep that in mind. Please stand your ground in representation of your constituent taxpayers. Don't give up, no matter what name calling is taking place. Please stand strong for us, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
We're tougher than we look.
Thank you.
Mr. Robert Hamilton.
Good evening. Wanted to give you a little bit of an update on where we're at. Within the next several days, you guys will get the estimate. That's from the contractor that we've selected. More importantly, what I want to discuss with you now is our tax dollars. Everybody in this room, we're all paying taxes. And I know I've been in here again and again and again. But when we pay taxes and our city commission gives a directive, and the directive is not followed, and then come back into this chamber and lie to the people, commissioners on the dais, is unacceptable from the taxpayer. We have more traffic coming by, even though we're closed, and we've been closed for almost a year now. In May, it'll be a year. And I keep hearing the same thing from the people that are coming by. They want to know why it's not done. They want to know why the tax dollars were abused this way, and about the oversight. It is incumbent upon you to set a new directive that if your oversight and your rules are not followed from that dais, you need to terminate them just like we would in any corporation, any Fortune 500 company. This is, with all due respect, and I'm not being mean, this is our money. You people work for us, not in a bad way. We put you there because we care about you. There are other issues inside this government that need to be resolved. We shouldn't be victimized again and again, and then the taxpayer pays again and again. We hear the beautiful stuff that's put on for the CRA and the CRB. It looks good on the surface, but when you really sit down and look at some of it, who's paying for this? This isn't the money from the city. This is taxpayer money. You all have an important job to do. We put you here to do the job. I need you to do the job, not for me, for everybody sitting in this room tonight. We pay the tax. We care about each other to come into this room. I don't put my dog in other fights unless they align with myself, and it's sad to walk into a room where there's so many of us heading in the same direction. It's sad. But I believe in progress. I believe it can be resolved. I believe everything that's going on can be resolved with cool heads. There's 3 attorneys sitting there. The first thing you learn is mediate, negotiate. You don't have to go beating the crap out of each other. Let's just sit back and do what Judge Geiger used to say, the reasonable man's standard. I spent 25 years in front of that man and the other judges here. What is a reasonable man's standard? I've not asked for anything more than that, and I've been treated horribly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Frank McChrystal?
Before I get on my topic, I was thinking as Mr. Martell was talking about the state and their view from 30,000 feet and the planning they're going to do. You know, I was thinking that might be a good thing because Martin County did the absolute wrong thing when they built the second Palm City Bridge. It should have been built north of here on going out Britt Road to reroute all the Port St. Lucie worker bees out to 95 somewhere that had to come over through our town here. So maybe they'll do some good things. Well, with that in mind too, US 1 will be a parking lot soon. There is no answer for it, and I would hope that the city of Stuart just stands firm and says, hey, we didn't cause this, there's nothing we can do about it. US 1's a parking lot, tough. We're not gonna redesign our whole downtown to allow people to get off of US 1 quicker. Sorry, okay? All right, so once again, I want to thank the commission majority for doing what you do, and the more I think about it, you're probably unique in the whole country in the sense that each of you in the majority really got out amongst the people and listened to them, and none of you really had to do this thing, okay, but you did it, and you felt something was wrong, and now you're sticking to what you promised the people, and it's just got to be maybe just unique in the whole country at these city levels and county levels. So again, thank you so much. Civics, I wasn't paying too much attention, but some people call it a representative democracy or a republic. All I know is we the people, and I think it works like this. I think we the people elect representatives, and we have a majority representative here, and then the representatives form policy based on what their constituents have asked them to do. And then the next level is the administrative level. Your lawyers and city managers and city planners and everybody there. I think it's their professional job to just not take any side of any political issue, but do what they've been asked to do and be on board with the majority, which would be the people now. And, you know, this right, left, pro this, anti that, it swings back and forth, but I think we need the professionalism at the administration level. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. McChrystal.
I have no more, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
Move approval of the consent calendar, which includes the minutes of January 13th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Clark and a second by Vice Mayor Collins. Do we have any public comment on this issue? No? Seeing none? All in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
No opposed. Okay.
Waiting for a name roll call.
Ordinance, first reading. Mr. Baggett, will you read item 2 for our consideration, please?
Absolutely. Ordinance number 2537-2025, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, amending the city's official zoning map to rezone a .33 acre parcel which is located at 255 Southwest 6th Street from the urban waterfront zoning designation to the urban highway zoning designation, providing directions to the city clerk, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, and providing an effective date and for other purposes. Mr. Mayor, if I may be heard briefly.
Do we have a presentation by staff?
We do, but I just wanted to briefly give some legal guidance on this. As you recognized initially that this is the first reading of the ordinance, and I thought it would just, we've had this issue come up multiple times when we have 2 hearings, and I just wanted to reference our code where for a rezoning such as this, it says the City Commission public hearing. 2 hearings shall be conducted by the City Commission to consider a proposed rezoning. Such hearings may be scheduled on the agenda of a regular City Commission, but shall be held after 5 p.m. and shall not be less than 10 calendar days apart. The rezoning ordinance may be read by title at the first hearing, which is where we're at now, and then the second hearing shall be quasi-judicial in nature. The rezoning ordinance may be adopted at the conclusion of the quasi-judicial hearing, which is the second hearing. I just wanted to point that out because I know sometimes we go ahead and vote at the first hearing, and under our code, it says at a minimum it should be read. You could have the option of just doing a motion to post or to move it to the second hearing and have the quasi-judicial hearing next week or the next hearing. However, it's been kind of practice of the commission to do it at both hearings. So I just wanted to let you know that, to give you some sort of legal guidance as far as what our code says. In my impression, it tends to, and I've seen it at other cities, in fact, the city that I used to work at, that they would do the same. They wouldn't have much of a quasi-judicial public hearing at the first reading. They would do it at the second hearing. However, I've seen us do it at both. So I just wanted to reiterate the code.
The agenda item indicates it is quasi-judicial.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I felt the need to point it out to you what our code reads.
Is there a consensus of the commission, how we would like to proceed here?
I have my light up. So, Mr. City Attorney, if I'd like to hear the staff report and then have consideration, and then maybe we'll vote at the next meeting, does the mayor have to go through the entire quasi-judicial colloquy now, or do we just ask for the staff report?
No,
How does the staff prepare, like if they had their legal notices, they would turn that in now, today?
we can go through the staff presentation. Again, it's up to y'all. At a minimum, all you are required to do is read,
Hear it.
what I just did is read the title, and then, where I envision, when they created this code, and I've witnessed it when I worked for Port St. Lucie, is they just moved the item to the next
meeting.
next hearing, and then that's when you have the quasi-judicial hearing.
Sure, okay.
My concern is having evidence, testimony in one hearing, and then have it at a second hearing. And,
Okay,
technically, you're not,
If we have a staff
Now-
presentation, I mean,
It's
if we
evidence.
were to hear from the applicant, we're in a quasi-judicial proceeding at that point, correct?
I would just caution you, because you could make comments like you're making a decision now when you haven't heard all the evidence. And all the evidence would be concluded at the second hearing, and that would be my concern
Okay.
about voting on your opinion on the item, as far as waiting for all the evidence to be concluded at the second hearing.
okay, after you've read which you've read now, should we move it to a date certain then, for 2 weeks from now?
It's already scheduled.
What is that?
It's already scheduled for the
Yes,
next
okay, yeah,
agenda.
that's right, the second, yeah. So we have, this is a first reading, and then, so the second hearing is, so they know, and the notices will follow that. So then, in order not to mess anything up,
But hold-
Let's hear him out.
we shouldn't hear anything today. We should just move it to the next meeting.
Lee, what would you recommend?
So here's the issue that comes up. You may have questions for the applicant or whatnot, and you could raise that in the first hearing, then they could address it at the second hearing. If you don't do anything today or hear from anybody, I'm just giving you the negative aspect of it. You get to the next meeting, and then you'd have to have a third hearing to have them come back, so, which is the negative side to doing as I'm proposing. But I'm explaining to you how the code is written, and it's my impression that that's how it was envisioned, just a mere reading at the first hearing. And we have addressed this in the past, and I've raised this issue before, and I've emailed you all about my opinion on this in the past. But I just thought I'd bring it up because here we are again, and we have a first reading, and then we'll have a second reading at the next
Think
hearing.
we should just proceed with it so that we can hear from Jody, we can hear from the applicant, we can get our questions out?
I do have a question for Lee on this
Sure.
procedurally. So, at the end of assuming we heard from, the applicant, Jody, we really wouldn't vote, because there is technically a roll call at the end of the,
How I've heard it at other
so how would you end?
places is,
It's
the
just-
motion is to transmit the item to the next stage, the second reading.
Transmit to the second reading.
Right.
And that's
But
what you would vote on.
Right.
Seems the best of both worlds.
And then you don't vote on the merits of the motion because, and if you are going to hear from the applicant, I think we should do quasi-judicial, and they need to be under oath, because it would be, then you can rely on evidence you heard in the first hearing, also in the second hearing.
And it should be noted
we
that
found
you
it.
can't vote no, because the state
Yeah.
statute requires you to transmit it to the second hearing. So it's
Okay,
not
so
much
let's,
to vote.
Let's follow the rules.
But and I've heard the reason why you guys have had in the, maybe not in this board, but prior boards, and I think we might have as well, is when you have, a quasi-judicial at the first reading, also, you prevent having a third hearing, because
Right.
you give guidance or feedback to the applicant and they come back. I don't, this seems more of a straight issue than, like, they're not presenting a project, and there would be a lot going back and forth, but again, this is the first reading. I just wanted to point out, because this issue has come up before.
no, thank you for taking the time, and I think the manner in which we're going to proceed is simpler and safer for all of us. So, do the commissioners have any ex parte communications to disclose with this applicant? Commissioner Reed?
Yes, I spoke to the applicant Friday or Saturday this week.
Okay. Commissioner Giobi?
I'm not sure, I'm going to ask Lee a question of the city attorney. I did not speak with the applicant, but I was at the LPA meeting, so I did hear their presentation. I don't know if that counts for being, for anything, but I just wanted to let that be known.
Nothing wrong with disclosing it, but it's more of discussions outside of a public hearing that
Okay.
they would know about. So it would get, let's say you spoke to anybody, including the applicant, the applicant would have an opportunity to question you about those communications.
I've none, and I'm here with an open mind.
Vice Mayor?
I spoke with Nimesh probably a year and a half ago, a while ago, 2 years ago. Time's flying, man. That's all.
Surprisingly, I have none with this applicant. So,
I guess they didn't want to talk to us.
could you place any potential witnesses under oath, please, Mr. Baggett?
Anybody who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant, raise your hand, including staff. You affirm that everything you're about to testify and provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Will the Development Department please provide a brief summary of the agenda item, including the location, size of the property, current zoning, zoning requested, and list the applicant's request to deviate from the land use development regulations?
Good evening, board members. For the record, my name is Jody Kugler. I'm the Development Director with the City of Stuart. Tonight, I'll be presenting agenda item number 2 for an amendment to the official zoning atlas from urban waterfront to urban highway zoning destination located at 255 Southwest 6th Street. Pursuant to the Land Development Code public notice requirements, on December 20th, 2024, the applicant mailed notices to all adjacent owners within 300 feet of the subject parcel to provide details of the requested petition and the date and time of tonight's public hearing. In addition to 3 public notice signs were placed on the property with the same information. For context, the .33 acre parcel at 255 Southwest 6th Street is currently vacant. The site is within the Urban Overlay District in the Community Redevelopment Area. The future land use is downtown redevelopment. And the existing zoning is urban waterfront, which refers to special waterfront-oriented uses, including marinas, restaurants, entertainment, hotels, and higher density residential. Existing marine industrial uses are conditionally permitted. This shows the property with the existing zoning. As you see, most of the property is in a purple, and this property is in a blue, which is the urban waterfront. The proposed zoning is urban highway. This occurs on both sides of the Southeast Federal Highway, and it traverses the urban code district. This area allows for large front setbacks and highway-oriented commercial or high-density residential uses with generous parking lots. As you can see, majority of the property is located in the urban highway. The property that is in question is located, let me just put my cursor on there, is this right here. It would be consistent to the proposed development that's going to the west. This item was heard at the local planning agency. They held a public hearing on January 16, 2025, and a board voted unanimously, passing a motion to forward a recommendation of approval to the City of Stuart City Commission. Also at the public hearing, some of the adjacent residents did express concerns regarding not this particular application, but when it moves forward through the site planning process to consider the location of the parking lot, the lighting, lighting pollution, security, and the condition of Fraser Creek. The LPA also recommended if the petitioner would consider holding a neighborhood meeting to discuss specific concerns, and the petitioner is going to move forward with the neighborhood meeting once the plans are prepared and ready to be seen for site plan level. This petition conforms to this criteria outlined in section 11.01.09 of the Stuart Land Development Code, Florida statutes, and inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policy of the City of Stuart Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommends the City Commission forward to the second reading / adoption of ordinance number 2537-2024 to approve the rezoning the subject parcel from urban waterfront to the urban highway. This concludes staff presentation. We also have the petitioner who also has a presentation prepared for you tonight.
Just before we go forward, Lee, it doesn't indicate that staff can take questions, but can we allow the commissioners?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff?
I do.
Okay.
I forgot about
Commissioner Giobe?
Yes. I realize that a site plan is probably not ready yet, but did they submit a temporary site plan as to whether this is agreed upon or not? Because there would be two ways that this would be built.
Commissioner Joby, they have submitted a site plan. During the site plan process, that's when the inconsistency of the design guidelines with the urban waterfront versus the urban highway. One says park in the rear, one says
Right.
park in the front. So to make the property consistent, staff recommended they rezone the portion. They purchased all the other parcels and put it in the unity title. So this is one little piece that actually is not even touching the Fraser Creek waterfront. So this would make the guidelines consistent.
Okay. And how does it affect other properties that are just touching the creek, where they're not full-blown on the creek? Are there other properties that are similar to this?
So in this particular application, let me just go back to the slide. You can see the property that's unified, which is all yellow. This is the property has been purchased by the petitioner, is all consistent, even though one portion of it does touch the Fraser Creek, but that has already been zoned urban highway. So this just makes it consistent throughout the corridor.
Okay. And have they met with the people in the neighborhood to, have they
So-
met with the people in the neighborhood? I know at the LPA meeting, I
Yes.
just heard that there was some, that they wanted to meet with the developers.
So the staff has been in touch with the neighborhood. Once we receive the new revised set of plans with the new architectural, with the consistent design guidelines, we will be setting up a neighborhood meeting, and we'll be meeting with the neighborhood as well.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Forgive me, go ahead.
I'm going through the
No.
applicant's packet.
Commissioner Reed,
so
do you have questions of staff?
Not yet.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Are they required to have a neighborhood meeting within the urban? So you're doing that supplementary to try to be a good neighbor?
Yeah, I mean, for
Commissioner
what it's worth,
Collins.
To do a zoning change, the theory is that there's no development at all.
Right.
What you'd be looking at under Chapter 3 is all of the uses that could be done in urban highway or urban waterfront. You know, we all know Nemish, and we've had business dealings with them in the past, so everybody's familiar with what they're doing. But the truth is, the agenda item tonight is not about a site plan or the development, but is rather limited to the issue of the zoning.
And you're not going to flip this to do apartments, right? I'm just kidding.
Oh, well.
I know you're a hotelier, I'm joking.
They'll make a presentation, and then you can question.
Okay, so Jody, did they have to be consistent here, or you just recommended just to have the consistent zoning?
Commissioner Collins, we did recommend that because there is portions of the code, and when you're dealing with two different types of design guidelines, urban highway says everything should be pushed up to the front, you're parking in the rear. Your urban waterfront says put a sherry bank in back with these vestibules so they can see down the waterway. So that would, if you kept with the urban waterfront and the urban way it is today, it's very inconsistent, so you're gonna end up with the design guidelines that are a little hodgepodge, just trying to make both of them work. So by changing it to the urban highway, they will push their hotel further to the front where it should be, and
Are
the
there any
parking.
other guidelines within that distinction between waterfront and highway that would make it more appropriate for that particular parcel to remain waterfront? Is there anything beyond the parking that's a cardinal difference that you could point to? Or is it just really isolated to parking and making sure that
It's incidental to just inconsistency, yes. It would be the parking and where the placement of the structure would be.
And for clarification, urban highway, which is what we're talking about changing this to, would have the parking in the back, so off of US 1, which would create additional buffer in between this hotel and the residential neighborhood that's on the other side of that creek.
And the
That is correct. And just for clarification, this particular parcel, which is, if you notice on my screen right here, this doesn't even touch the waterfront. Your water's right here. This doesn't even touch the waterfront. So really, it should have been stayed as urban highway.
With the parking lot going in the back and being right up against the creek, does that affect the drainage and/or if that should be more or less permeable with that parking lot and the creek there? Are there considerations with that if it's front versus rear?
So without really getting into the site plan weeds, they do have to address all their drainage and fix the long-term drainage issues that have been going on other properties. So they will, I think they are trying to establish some of the impervial pavers.
Whether
so-
the parking was in the front or back, though, as
Right.
it relates to zoning,
It
we
doesn't-
shouldn't be discussing
Right.
their site plan.
Right.
So,
But if the
I-
cardinal difference between the two zoning designations is where the parking goes, I think that's relevant.
correct.
That's actually where the structure goes, but not the stormwater control. Our code requires everyone to maintain stormwater and present an engineered stormwater plan regardless of which zoning it is.
It's not more.
And they both have the same zoning requirements.
It's not more demanding on waterfront versus highway, it's the same?
No, that's in your chapter 6, and that's, all gets into site details.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, does the petitioner wish to make a presentation?
Commissioner Reed.
Oh, Commissioner Reed, I'm sorry, do you have a?
I was just gonna state, I was going through it. Yes, the biggest difference is the parking, front, rear. If there was parking on the side, that would limit them to 3 stories with the urban highway. There was curb cuts, which may or may not matter to some. That's all I have for now, though.
That's why it's good to have you here. You can real time dig it up out of the code.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jared Gaylord. For the record, I do have a PowerPoint presentation for Polk Street Hotels. I'm joined by Mr. Nimesh Patel this evening of Polk Street Hotels, Inc. As Jody mentioned, we were before the city's LPA meeting on the 16th, where we did receive unanimous approval. And I'm going to ask Jody to flip through the slides when he gets a moment. So, next slide. This is the surrounding neighborhood. If you're familiar with the location, it's on the east side of US 1, just south of that Fraser Creek Bridge and just south of Doondog for the hot dog aficionados, and just north of 6th Street. You can see that it is somewhat of a unique shaped property. There's about 100 feet that is fronting Fraser Creek. But again, the odd part about that is that 100 feet that fronts Fraser Creek is not the portion that's zoned urban waterfront. That's actually previously zoned urban highway. Next slide, please. This is just an up-close portion of the slide. It's the southeast corner, which is 0.33 acres. That's current where Jody is using the cursor to designate. That vacant area right there is currently urban waterfront. The rest of the lot is urban highway. As Jody did mention, my clients purchased this property in April of 2023. It was 3 separate parcels at that time. Those obviously needed to be joined with a unity of title so that the property could be redeveloped. Obviously, you wanted to have one cohesive property as opposed to 3 with different setbacks and everything like that. So there was a unity of title filed in the Martin County Public Records in May of 2023. This is just an aerial because there were some comments at the LPA meeting that I did want to show that vantage point from some of the property owners across from Fraser Creek towards the property. You can see that the distance from some of the homes on the east side of Fraser Creek to our property is about 71 feet. So there is a little bit of a distance there. There's also dense mangroves on both sides of the creek, which will help buffer some of the view. It's also our opinion. And
They're about 40 feet tall.
they're not, no, not 40 feet tall. They do have planned a 6-foot site wall there. And again, these plans are preliminary, so they may be subject to change, but there is a 6-foot CBS site wall on the rear of the proposed parking lot. And then there's also 8 wax myrtle plants that are about 12 feet tall. So there will be some landscaping in addition to the existing mangroves that will help buffer or limit the view from across the waterway, which we think is helpful. We're also removing the old crematorium, which should be a positive. Next slide, please. And then this is just a view facing east. Again, you can see where the crematorium is located. That's actually zoned urban highway. And then just to the south of there, where the cursor is, that is zoned urban waterfront. Now, the parcel directly to the east, where that structure is, that's also zoned urban waterfront, which makes sense. Again, it is located on Fraser Creek, but our lot is not, or that portion of the lot, rather, is not along Fraser Creek. And again, you can see there's some vegetation on both sides of the creek. Next slide, please. These are just some of the existing site photographs. If you've been by, you can see that the property needs some enhancement, and we believe that the new hotel will provide that. It was a former funeral home, and again, the hotel will be located on the front. If it was urban waterfront, again, that hotel would be located closer to the creek, which obviously would be much more difficult to buffer with landscaping, anything else. Next slide. This is just a survey of the property. You can go to the next slide, which is a close-up. Yep, this is just a survey of the property. The property is 1.58 acres total, or 68,891 square feet. And again, that parcel D in the lower right-hand corner is where the rezoning will take place. Next slide. This is just a copy of the unity of title. You can go to the next slide. And these are slides that we've already been through with the rezoning. Next slide. That's just the future land use designated downtown. Next slide. And I'm happy to read through the rezoning standards, but there should be in your agenda packets, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Commissioner Giobi?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. I know that where the crematorium is designated, it's not designated waterfront.
Correct.
But it is basically closer to the water.
That is
The
correct.
dismantling of that crematorium, will it in any way impact or damage the creek?
Not to my knowledge, but again, that would probably be a question for the contractor, which I'm sure that they're gonna ensure that, the rubble does not fall into the creek or anything like that. I'm sure that
Right.
there will be safeguards taking place so that
Right.
it
Well,
doesn't.
those safeguards would definitely be in that
Yes.
contract, I would hope.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that would be, I presume, with the city's permitting office as well. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I have none.
Any other questions?
So, just to be clear, we're only talking about that little .33 acres.
That is correct.
That's the only area that we're making a decision on this evening.
That is correct.
Not the, okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, Commissioner Reed.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, this might be for the development department. I know it's the zoning that we're discussing. Why would there be things in here where it's talking about the possible overloading of the city's sewage collection treatment, obviously going from ACOG Funeral Home to
Good point.
a hotel that we necessarily, I understand it's a zoning change, so we have no clue on the site plan, so we don't know the room sizes, the capacity, so how do you make that determination, and why would it be in the packet for
The
us?
zoning that you would be determining is, if you looked under Chapter 3, under the urban code, where you were just reading the difference of
Correct.
where the buildings were, you would look and determine what the capacity was for urban waterfront, and then you would compare it with urban highway. And the distinction would be, does the city have the capacity to absorb any change? It's a lot different when you're changing it from R1 to B2, where it's going from single-family residential to multifamily office. But in this particular instance, what staff will tell you is that if you read the urban code, that both zoning districts allow the exact same uses.
Correct.
So it wouldn't matter which zoning it was, the impacts or intensities on parking, utilities, police service, et cetera, are identical. It's just the location and style of the structure that was going to be built that is the distinguishing factor. So from a concurrency or capacity standpoint, it's equal, because you're not talking about a hotel here, you're talking about every single possible use. You have to imagine that if they changed their mind and didn't build it, if someone else came along, it would be zoned urban highway. And then what could they build as urban highway versus urban waterfront? The only new thing they could build is, under our code, you cannot build a automobile repair service business unless it's urban highway, and then it has to be inside. So by changing it from urban waterfront to urban highway, technically that somebody could ultimately build an automobile repair service there. But adjacent to it already, they own the property that's already urban highway, so technically speaking, they could do the automobile repair service anyway, which leads us full circle back to the fact that both codes allow the same uses. So the capacity or intensities of use don't change. They both would have the same impacts on the Stuart's infrastructure.
So as like a board member up here, what would we do to look out for, I guess, the public's interest as well? Because, and I understand where you're coming from, Mike, and, but it's a big zoning change, obviously, and a big development change. Like I said, going from ACOC Funeral Home to many more people that are going to be there besides coming for a funeral home services, and they're leaving. And I understand it's zoning, so you can't really discuss it then. I mean,
it's not ACOC Funeral Home.
Well, the funeral, what was
It
there?
was, it was urban waterfront, which allowed hotels, funeral homes, movie theaters, restaurants, et cetera, and they're requesting to make it urban highway, which allows funeral homes, hotels, restaurants, et cetera. So I know that the use was a funeral home at some point,
Way less intense. Yeah, that's where I was going with
but
it.
the zoning allowed,
Correct.
ACOC could have built a hotel there as well, just like you could build a hotel.
But they would have had a site plan then.
You guys are speaking two different languages. You're speaking real-world practical
Yep.
intensity of development, and you're speaking
Well, no,
I'm
I
speaking
understand.
about
lawyer
zoning.
rezoning, which is
I'm
what the
talking about
hearing is.
just
technically.
zoning, not site plan. The thing is, when you have an urban, when you have a code.
This won't come in for a site plan though, will it?
Well, that's the thing. The only future land use that the city has that requires everything to come in for the commission vote is neighborhood special district. Every other land use the city has allows development by right. In this particular instance, these properties already had a future land use of downtown, which allowed development by right. Within downtown, their zoning was either urban highway, urban center, urban neighborhood, or urban waterfront. And those all came with development by right without needing to come before the commission unless they wanted to vary from that code. In this instance, what you heard was the primary distinction between urban waterfront and urban highway is that both allow hotels, both allow 4 stories, both allow the same number of square feet. It's just that urban highway requires the building to be built against the highway and up against the highway with the parking in back, and urban waterfront requires the building to be built up against the water with the parking in front toward the highway. So from an intensity or density or whatever that perspective is, it's the same. The real question is, as a commissioner, what is visually, what do you want to see on that corridor? And one of the things is is it compatible with the adjacent uses? Well, the reality of it is the blue on that map is urban waterfront. So it's already been demonstrated that it is compatible with urban waterfront. And the purple on the map, which is every other property on the highway all the way down, is also demonstrated as also being compatible. So the board really has the discretion to decide which it deems more appropriate.
I think he raises a good point that might be a sub-conversation or may not even belong in this particular hearing, but how does this commission, beyond the, legally, technically accurate zoning and this kind of thing, how does this commission
Commissioner Collins, could I just ask that are we finished with the
Yes.
petitioner?
Okay.
done with
Do we have
Thank
any
you.
other questions of him from the board? If not, okay, then we can discuss it.
Yeah.
And you don't wish to present any other information?
Not unless you have any questions.
Okay. So the presentation of evidence has ended and the hearing is closed. Does any member of the public wish to make a comment regarding this?
Mayor, I have none.
Okay. You have additional time to make a presentation, additional facts known?
If you have, I did include some additional information if there were questions, but they're much
Nope.
more related to site plan
No.
approval rather than
Okay.
the rezoning matter, which
Okay, so I'm asking for direction in the form of a motion to simply
Transmit it to the next.
correct.
Second.
I'd like to make,
Oh.
anyone
No,
make
we
one?
need a
You were-
motion.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to move it to the next meeting in 2 weeks on the premise that the neighborhood meeting would be done before then? Is that possible? That you
Commissioner
guys,
Reed, if I may,
Are we allowed to
so
require
they're
that?
not, the way that we talked to
not allowed
the,
to do that?
I mean,
Sorry,
they can have a
Commissioner Reed,
neighborhood
we're not-
meeting
we're not
regarding the
legally
zoning.
required.
Gotcha.
No, sir. Thank you. Apparently, we're not legally required them to do that.
But we can ask.
Separate from the motion.
Yes, separate from the motion.
Yes, Jody.
I'm sorry, if I may intervene. The way we left it with this, the residents that had concerns and wanted to do a neighborhood meeting is once they get the consistent zoning, then we're meeting with the neighborhood to go over the site plan and how it's going to function, how it's going to lay out, and have that
And
conversation
they would
with
go
them.
straight to the development department?
It is, yes, it'll go straight to the development department. But we are going to have that meeting before any development order is even drawn up.
Okay, but after the zoning is decided by the
Do we have a
commission.
motion?
I'm gonna withdraw
Second.
mine.
Are you,
He's withdrawing his motion.
So
Yeah,
we don't
let's-
have a motion yet.
I make a motion that we move this forward to the second required meeting.
We have a motion by Commissioner Clark,
Second.
and we have a second by the Vice Mayor. Will you clarify the motion for the record, please, Mr. Baggett?
Can I
If you
clarify
feel
my
there's any need
motion?
for it.
No, I think the motion was to transmit the agenda item to the second reading at the next commission meeting, which it's already scheduled.
Okay.
Ordinance number 2537-2025 as presented and read by the city attorney.
Okay, do we have any discussions or questions amongst the commissioners?
I had a question for the development department. That letter that we had on the presentation, was that the same letter that was sent out before it came before the LPA board? Because I think the property address was different.
Commissioner Reed, we did correct that and send out new letters.
Okay.
That would be a big deal.
Vice Mayor, any additional?
Yes, just back to that original point. I know we're still in the middle of this, but how, to Commissioner Reed's point, how do you safeguard internally? You know, if every single, for instance, on US 1, if every one of those parcels became 4-story hotels, that would have to put some demand on our infrastructure that's not wholly accounted for?
You don't put that in your code. I mean, honestly, the truth of it is we know that economy-wise, if everything was a hotel, there'd be too many hotels and nobody would stay in them all and they'd go broke and things would
Of course,
develop.
but
I
if
know what you're
everything was
saying.
4-story
But
apartments and, you know,
theoretically,
mixed use and
the
whatever.
security behind it is that that's what codes are for. A lot of communities, and that's where the
In terms of
misconception
like
of Stuart
water
came.
supply, how do you make sure that
We
you
already have
audit?
determined that we have sufficient water supply by a lot to be able to provide water and sewer for everything left in Stuart very easily.
And development reviews that
Right.
as a metric? How,
Yeah.
what is the actual measurement to that, that's
Well, there's-
tangible to check off that we still have room?
So when you're building a commercial building, you have equivalent residential connections. And an equivalent residential connection is a formula that the utilities department uses to determine how many gallons per day a particular use will use based upon actuarial numbers that are widely available in the industry. And therefore, a dentist office that has a water pick is probably gonna use a lot more water than a lawyer's office. And so the information that's available, all calculated down to these equivalent residential connections, or ERCs, is how they charge the person building or constructing, whether it's office, residential, hotel, movie theater, whatever it is.
But
And
beyond
then-
code and like land use and zoning that actually marries to tangible, real-world water supply, do we have sort of a running tally of how
We
much we're
have-
using and what
we
we have
have-
left to supply?
We did a study last February, or 2 Februaries ago now, for a consumptive use that authorized us to generate and produce roughly 3.1 million gallons of water per day. We are not consuming 3.1 million gallons of water per day.
Are we tallying what we're consuming?
Every single day, we know how many gallons of water was pumped out of the water treatment plant. And this hotel, and again, I don't know the math on what ERCs are, but I can tell you that when they do the review, a 4-story hotel or a 2-story hotel or a 20-room hotel versus an 80-room hotel versus a 400-room hotel, there's mathematical numbers that would be, and again, they're not exact, but it's an estimate of what the consumption would be, just like
So
I
then
can tell you
that-
the average household uses X gallons a day, but
So
some
then-
people use more and
So
some
then
people use
that
less.
consumptive use permit coupled with what you're actually outputting per day is that metric?
Right,
And that's what you put up against a development?
exactly.
Got it. That's,
Right.
I have a
But
question
you,
for the
you
city
actually bring
manager.
up an interesting point, Vice Mayor. Because the city, we will eventually bump up against that. That will be the capacity of the city.
Well, that we already have. When we did the consumptive use for 23,700 people,
Right. We know
when
that
we get
that's
there,
it.
it's over. Right,
So whether they're in private homes or hotels or,
right.
yeah, so that will be a limiting element to the city's growth.
yeah, you would basically redevelop with the same density and usage in terms of water consumption, something similar.
So you're,
Your consumptive use on that particular parcel would have to mirror when you redevelop.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
Where's like the running tally of what we're consuming currently?
but we know how much water we
well,
use every day.
we can, I mean, right, you can come in every day and Peter can meet with you and tell you how many gallons. The other thing is, it's an interesting number
You said our,
because
hold on, time out. You said our permits for 3 million a day?
roughly 3.1 million per day. But what's interesting is that at the end of the month,
Yep.
obviously there's 30 days and it's $3 million or 3 million gallons a day. You would think that the number of gallons that we made would equal the number of gallons that went to every single person's house. But we have found over the years that there's pipes underground that leak. And so at the end of the month, when the billing comes in, if, for example, we use 2.5 million gallons left our plant today, the billing might only show that 2,490,000 gallons were used, and there's 10,000 gallons that didn't go through a meter. Now, that might be because somebody cut the pipe and made it go around the meter to skip it, or that somebody cut a hole in it on accident, or that there's a leak somewhere, or that there's a joint leaking, or 1,000 different things. But
So
when
that,
we-
that consumptive use permit isn't married just to a population density, it's also married to the.
Total development.
How does the 3.1 million and 25,000 or 24,000 dovetail? Because my understanding was it was like a population density, is it like
Well,
whichever one you
it
hit
was,
first?
well,
Or-
the reason that it was presented to you guys in population density is because that's what you wanted to hear. The presentation by the consultant was responding to your questions, but the truth was that if every single parcel in Stuart was developed to its maximum, it wasn't always residential. Some of it could have been office building or Costco or whatever it was, but the study that was done was the maximum of every single parcel equals this projected number of gallons, and they use that to extrapolate it and say, essentially, based upon the land uses you have right now and the maximum densities you have right now, you're going to end up with 23,700 people when you get to every piece of land that's developed to its maximum density. The consumptive use permit, the truth is, we could have produced 4 million gallons a day, but the board chose to produce the number that equated to the study. So to go the other way and cap it at the 23.7, so effectively regulating the amount of growth across the board, no matter what it is, to that number. And so in order to change that, you'd have to change the consumptive use permit, change capacities, and you also, our sewer has a significant amount of capacity anyway, but that also plays a role in it. And we entered in an agreement in 2007 with the county to provide them sewer and to have interconnection for our water in the event that there was an emergency, so that no one would actually go without water.
Whenever we don't have a slammed agenda, because it's a larger conversation, I would love to have a discussion about that, just to better understand, how that works going forward with development, and, how that relates real world into what Jody's
Certainly.
approving or not.
I agree, we can bring something forward for you for that.
Just so we're not tying up
So,
anymore.
and-
You're paying a lot per hour to have him here, right? So.
And for what it's worth, obviously, February is a tight month because we have the zoning in progress, so it'll probably be in March that I bring it back. Not because we can't bring it back sooner, but
I understand.
just strategically, it's probably better to wait till March with the agendas we have.
But theoretically, Mike, Mr. Mortel, you could have a by right development on your piece of property, but if the city can't supply you the water, if we don't have the capacity, we
It's-
don't have to approve it.
We can't approve it.
Right, we can't approve it.
Right.
It is a limiting
That's-
factor, element.
right. And by the way, Indiantown's in that position right now.
Yeah.
They don't have the water, and they've got development applications they cannot address because they don't have it.
Okay, any questions, other questions or comments?
I had a
Commissioner
question.
Giobbi.
I had a question for the city manager, Mr. Mortel. I'm just questioning that Kimley Horn presentation that was made to the city, because you quoted it, and I'm just confused because it did say that they suggested that the city depend on shallow wells, which draw from the surface aquifer to produce 3 million gallons of water a day. The current capacity of the 23 wells is 5.5 million gallons on a good day. The city then would maximize production of the reverse osmosis plant to yield 3 million gallons a day, 1.5 million more than originally planned. So it's already at the point in July when they made this, it was already basically yielding more than it was originally planned to. It had a total capacity now of 6 million a day. Residents, visitors, and businesses currently use an average of 3.1 million gallons a day in July of 2024, not even taking into account anything that was built since then or will be built in the next couple of years.
Okay.
So my question is, you're saying the report was based on information we were asking back for?
No.
Was it not factual?
I said the report related to residential density because that's the question you were asking. Not the number of gallons that was being prepared and generated, but the question the commission asked was, how many people does that equate to? And the answer was 23,700 people. But the engineer that did that report didn't care about density. They were focused on well capacity, volume of water, and a DEP conversation as it related to a consumptive use permit for water. Although we could pump more water out, the DEP's capacity is at 3.1 million. Before we built the RO plant, we were pumping 3 million gallons a day out of the superficial aquifer. We then built the RO plant, and as the report points out, we have the ability to pump $1.5 million a day, or gallons a day, out of the RO plant.
Well, that would be
give you-
nice.
No, it feels like it goes the other way, by the way.
Well, it was saying
But
actually
we
it was.
pump it in.
It was 3 million gallons a day, 1.5 more than originally
Right,
anticipated.
But both plants could operate alone. The point of it being is that if the problem with PFOA could not have been cured, and we couldn't have put in or the ion exchange failed, and we couldn't use the superficial aquifer at all, we would still be able to use the RO plant, generate the 3 million gallons, and provide our city with water. But that's not what we did. What we did is we use both plants, and we use a portion of water from the RO plant and a portion of water, and we blend them together to do two things. Number one, it helps charge the superficial aquifer. Number two, it saves us money on the replacement of the ion exchange media that's extremely expensive. And number three, it saves money on the operation of the RO plant, which is also extremely expensive. So what it is trying to find the sweet spot that makes operational costs most efficient. But at the end of the day, even though between the two plants we could have had 6 million gallons, we only got a permit for 3.1 million gallons. And the 3.1 million gallons is based upon taking every single parcel in the city of Stuart's water area and saying, in the future, if this gets built out to its maximum density, can this system support those uses?
And the rationale for that would be that you really should not be going above that 3, because if, God forbid, either one of those two were to fail,
Well,
you would now be in trouble.
and we would destroy the superficial aquifer if we started taking 5 million gallons a day out of it, because it would never rehydrate, and you would lose the resource.
Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, this was for Jody. So going through the agenda packet, I'm just trying to understand. I know the traffic data gets very confusing. I was looking on one of the pages, it was talking about based off of 94 rooms, and then it goes to 147, and then 164 and 159, I believe, in the agenda packet. I just want to make sure that's what I'm looking at.
Those are projections.
Okay, but we don't know because there's obviously.
Right, these are just projections that, based on that type of land use, those projections, could the zoning support those type of uses? So it all depends on what type of use you're looking at. So those are just projections in the report.
So for example, when it says daily traffic generation of 414 TPD, what does TPD stand for?
Traffic per day, right?
Traffic per day. So that'd be the daily traffic per day of vehicles coming in. So what would the TPD be for 147, 164, and 159 then?
I don't know, I don't have
it's-
that
we're not-
report
we're
in
not
front of
really
you.
talking
I was just
about
curious,
that.
but
It's
it
just-
wasn't in here. So
yes,
some
this
of it
is-
was, Mayor Rich, and that's why I was asking. Thanks.
So those are just projections based off the different type of uses within that land use or that zoning district. When the site development comes in, they'll have to do a site-specific type of
Correct.
traffic review based on the number of rooms.
Is this something that you and I would be able to sit down on so I understand it? Because I know if there was 94 rooms, it says in here there'd be 414 trips daily. So if hypothetically I sat with you, you would help me calculate the 147, 164, and 159 number?
I could assist you, but I'm not
Okay.
a traffic engineer.
And neither
so
am I. That's why I'm
but
asking.
I would assist, I could.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Somebody make it up.
Motion and second.
We have a motion and a second. We've concluded our deliberation, is that correct?
Yes.
So may we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Vice Mayor Collins,
There's
Commissioner Reed,
Did we?
Yes.
No, there is no public comment.
there's no public comment?
So I just want to make sure that you
I'm
know.
sorry,
this.
go ahead.
Commissioner Giobi,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
And Mayor Rich.
Yes.
When is that date certain again for the
Weeks.
public?
February 10th.
Okay. To make sure.
Mr. Baggett, item 3 for our consideration, please.
Thank you, guys.
Ordinance of the City of Stuart, Florida, repealing Article 9, expanded polystyrene and plastics regulation of Chapter 20 of the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicts and providing for an effective date.
We have a presentation by staff on this?
There really isn't a presentation by staff. In, I believe it was early November, the commission directed staff to bring back the straw ordinance as a rescission. Normally, when we do these types of ordinances, we would ask you to go through the language and tweak it to provide language to fulfill your intent or to make sure that we weren't opening up an opening for something that we didn't intend. But in this instance, the direction was to redline the entire regulation, and therefore there isn't, it's more of a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I will say that how we got here, I guess, is a better description. The original intention was that it was to ban plastic bags in grocery stores like they've done in communities and to get rid of those plastic bags. But after the commission that addressed this issue brought it up, it was determined that the state of Florida had preempted the regulation of any plastic containers, including plastic bottles, bags, et cetera. And as a result, the city didn't have the legal right to ban the bags. The intention behind the straws was to send a message, you know, look, we care about the plastics, we want our community to be aware of it and to take steps to, you know, avoid single-use plastics. The reality of it is that since it has been adopted, there hasn't been a noticeable decline of single-use plastics by anybody other than the businesses in the city of Stuart that do not use plastic straws. Those businesses actually have to incur an additional cost because non-plastic straws, like the bamboo straws or whatever they are significantly more expensive. The business that's not there anymore, Frankenstein's, the guy that owned that at the time told me that he could buy 1,000 plastic straws for $10 and he could only buy 100 of the other straws for $10. Again, not that it matters, because you could also have no straws at all. But it turned out that the issue of straw, well, and that was the other thing. People are using biodegradable straws with a styrofoam cup and a plastic lid. And it really just turned out to be not a huge financial burden, but it was a financial burden and a regulation placed on businesses in Stuart that didn't exist anywhere else. And if you were in South Stuart or north of the bridge, there was literally competing businesses across the street that didn't have to comply with it or do it. And so the commission gave us direction to bring it back to have it rescinded, and that's how we're here.
Okay.
And it's the pleasure of the board.
Mayor,
Motion and a
yeah,
second.
Mayor, I would like to move approval of ordinance number 2538, 2025.
We have a motion by the vice mayor,
I'll second the
a
motion.
second by Commissioner Giobbe. Is there any public comment on this? Mr. Brackbill, you know better. Would you please hand the green card?
You have to put your new address on there.
Yeah, it's 406 Southeast Finney Drive, Stuart, Florida. 34996. Yeah, yeah. Quickly, the only thing I wanted to comment on, and Mike, his analysis is really good in that it put a real economic burden on businesses in Stuart and put them in a competitive disadvantage. And I don't think we should be doing that. And I was not in favor of that at the time for that reason. But one of the things, the whole idea of potentially, recycling and keeping that stuff out of the water and out of the, environment is still a generally good idea. I just don't think it's the city's responsibility to force it on private business. But I think we could incentivize the use of, there's designations that the ocean that can be done for clean oceans and things like that we could incentivize a business that chooses to get that designation. Maybe we can give them a small credit against their fee or their permit or something like that to encourage. I don't think we should have forced the businesses, but I think we could encourage the businesses to, maybe take steps to still conserve, because it's our river and, it's our environment. So anyway.
Thank you.
Frank McChrystal.
Here we go.
He walks up like that.
What's that they call it with in evolutionary terms, a vestigial appendage or something?
Vestigial.
Vestigial appendage, yes. So this is just, this is left over from a previous commission as a feel-good about ourselves, okay? And I just love those mushy paper straws. I mean, once you're done with your drink, you can just slam it down and get some fiber. It all works out good. All right. So, but my point is this: I'm wondering if we went searching, how much more of that feel-good stuff of the previous. And I was a greenie way back before it was cool. I was a greenie when it started in 1974, okay? But how much of this nonsense could we find from the previous commission? All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That's all?
Count your blessings.
Be nice.
Count your blessings.
Helen.
Okay, we have a motion and a, oh, I'm sorry, Helen.
That's okay. Helen McBride, Flamingo Avenue. It was the environmentalist. We wanted to save the turtles, and that was the whole thing. It was our turtles. Now, we're not out there on the ocean. We're in here. And it wasn't, I don't blame past commissioners or the future commissioners. At the time, we were all here, and we were trying, because they showed what our turtles were getting into their stomachs. But it was the environmentalists who listened to the people, because the movement was save the turtles. Had nothing to do with past commissioners, people like Ellen McBride who can't stop talking. We were the environmentalists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that for or against?
Set the record straight.
We have no more, Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission regarding this?
Yeah, I like Helen, I know that it's a hard thing, and I've seen the restaurants and places that I've gone to, and basically nobody's complying, but that doesn't mean that we throw up and say that we're not gonna do anything. I think that there's other materials that can be used, and I know that the shops do what they can, and some people, not everybody uses soggy paper straws. But I think that I subscribe to making every single effort we can in every location. And it's not just because we're not having the possibility of having restaurants in our jurisdiction on the beach or whatever. We have them on the water here, on the waterfront too, but things are just going to our garbage. So I want to see us still continue to do as much as we can. I don't see any environmental folks here today, and I haven't really heard one way or another from any residents, but I think that I just want to at least say that I'm trying to do as much as I can for the environment, even though it somewhat seems like a fait accompli with our little city, but.
Yeah, this
I have
is,
one last question.
okay,
Not a
Commissioner
question. I'm just
Giobbe?
going to piggyback off of what Eula said. I don't think it's really about being an environmentalist. It's just being a good steward of our community and of our planet. So whatever straw you get, just don't throw it on the beach, throw it in the garbage, and it will be recycled. Thank you.
So, this allegation that PFAS and PFOA is in these straws comes from one study. As far as I could tell, I could only find one study that was in Belgium
Come on, you know
a couple
better than
years
that.
ago. And as it was set up here, you can get studies to say anything you want. I think Commissioner Clark makes a good point. I really hate going backwards here. And every effort, how small, and it is a small amount of the waste stream that is affected, is important.
You want to read some of these with me?
No, may I finish my comments?
I mean, we can go down the line on these if you want.
Yeah, after, you may make a comment after you. There's PFAS and PFOA in plastic straws. There's PFAS and PFOA in so much of, the plastic packaging that your food is in the grocery store. The other problem with the plastic straws is they contaminate the waste stream. And when we send our recycling to the plant, if there's too many plastic straws, they reject it and they just send it all to the dump. So what is the net result there if we're just contaminating our own garbage stream and recycling less and less? So I really don't feel like I have enough information at this point. I would like to understand the result, understand the costs incurred by contaminating the waste stream, if that actually does happen. There seems to be some contention there, but so along with Commissioner Clark, I just don't like to go backwards. I think every effort is worthwhile. And clearly, we have a commitment to our environment and our waterway, and I don't think this is a good decision at this point in time.
So there's been, there's been several different studies, and in fact, if you start to get into this, and I'm going to take a little bit of authority on this because it's kind of my world, this is kind of what I do with health. In fact, there are only a handful of companies that produce non-plastic, plant-based straws that have non-detect levels of PFAS. It's such an overwhelming normal within the plant-based straw industry. You have to search pretty far and wide and dig in to even find companies that have non-detect levels. And so basically our option would be either force, double down on this and force businesses to buy straws from one or two companies, which does not seem like a good idea. Or, just leave it up to business owners to make that decision for themselves, which, in the United States of America seems like the best idea to me. But I'll stop with that.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm always very reluctant to force businesses to behave in a certain way. And I think the point that it's not countywide is a very significant point, because that is unfair.
I should also throw into this conversation Florida statute, section 403.7033. The legislature finds that prudent regulation of recyclable materials is crucial to the ongoing welfare of Florida's ecology and economy. As such, the Department of Environmental Protection shall undertake an analysis of the need for new or different regulation of auxiliary containers, wrappings, or disposable plastic bags used by consumers to carry products from retail establishments. The analysis shall include input from state and local government agencies, stakeholders, private businesses, and citizens, and shall evaluate the efficacy and necessity of both statewide and local regulations of these materials. To ensure consistent and effective implementation, the department shall submit a report with conclusions and recommendations to the legislature no later than February 1st of 2010. And until this report is finished, the legislature adopts and recommends of the department, no local government agency, or state government agency may enact any rule, regulation, or ordinance regarding use, disposition, sale, prohibition, restriction, or tax of such auxiliary containers, wrappings, or disposable plastic bags. And as a result,
This is why we only have a
couldn't do
straw
anything,
ordinance.
right? Because the study isn't quite finished yet, but they're close.
No, it's only 14 years overdue. Come on.
Give it more time.
Any other comments or questions?
I have no other comments.
Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Giobe?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
No.
Mayor Rich?
No.
and Vice Mayor Collins.
Yes.
So, motion passes.
On first reading.
On first reading. We can always change our mind second reading.
Right, on first reading. Discuss D&D, authorization to schedule. Would you read this item for our discussion and deliberation, please, Mr. Baggett?
Absolutely. Resolution number 18-2025, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the city attorney to schedule an attorney-client session with the City Commission, city manager, city attorney, and outside legal counsel regarding pending litigation matters pursuant to Florida statutes, section 286.011, subsection 8, providing an effective date and for other purposes. And this was an agenda item that I prepared. And we have three separate cases in litigation. And it was my opinion that and they're all being handled by outside counsel, three different lawyers. And it's been my opinion that we need to have an attorney-client session for various reasons on each of these three cases. I can identify them, but they're listed in the agenda
So
item.
these are what are called shade meetings, Mr.
Correct. So as we commonly hear
Perhaps for the
sunshine.
new commissioners, you can. explain
Sure.
the shade meeting?
So you hear Florida sunshine, Florida sunshine, Florida sunshine.
We understand the concept.
So
Yes.
they call this shade meetings, so it's out of sunshine behind closed doors. So what we would have is we would come to a public meeting and we would open up for public comment, but then announce that we're going to have a shade meeting and we'll go into the antechamber with all of us up here and our outside counsel. And we'll also have in the room a court reporter who will take down everything that's been said, and that'll be available at the close of any of the cases.
No.
After the litigation.
Each one, yeah.
Yeah, each separately, respectively.
It becomes public record.
When that case is over, that becomes public record, and sometimes we'll have more than one shade meeting. But it will not be available during the pendency of the lawsuit. That just, it gives us a reason to discuss strategy in the case and also potential settlement without the other side knowing about it.
How soon do we need to do this?
Well, I've suggested, I've got two separate dates. Number one, I would suggest a special meeting, because we have three cases we've got to discuss. February 5th, which is a Wednesday, and we could do it any time during the day.
I can't do that.
Or we can add it to the regular meeting on February 24th. However, we do have a CRA that day at 4, and the city commission meeting starts at 5:30, and I believe the zoning in progress second reading would be then. So that would be a long day. We could do it earlier in the day.
We have the MPO on the 24th,
At what time is that?
9 to 12. It's slated for on my calendar.
You can't do it the
Let's
10th.
Take a look here.
We had some issues with the outside council schedule, and those were the two dates.
You don't have February the 12th? Oh, because the council can only come on those 2 days?
Well, would you be able to do it on the 24th?
At
Like-
1
like
o'clock
at 2
or 3
like-
o'clock?
Yeah, like 2 o'clock? Like 1:30 or 2 o'clock if
Do
you're
you
done.
think 2 hours is gonna be enough time to go through the cases? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Then we would go right into the meeting.
It's gonna take more time to go through the procedure just to get in the room, but
So if you think it's
'Cause
an hour,
af-
do you wanna do it at 3, and then we'll go into our CR?
I think we need more than an hour.
2 PM or 1:30?
On the 24th?
2:30?
You want to just do 1:30?
You know,
No, not
I guess
1:30.
I would suggest 2.
2
Then we have a
PM.
break in between CRA and this. It could
Okay.
go long, I mean, you guys could just, you guys could discuss a lot, I don't know, but
Can we get it
every
done-
meeting, we're gonna have to come back out.
Can we get it done in an hour and a half?
If you think so and you guys can be quick.
We don't have to come out between them. We're gonna call it on, we'll announce all three. We'll go into the shade meeting, discuss each one and separate them on the court reporter, and then we'll come back out. And then that way, the record will be clear so the court reporter can transcribe them, just to save them money, right?
We do have 3 separate lawyers, so each of them will have to have a different lawyer come in.
Right. But we don't have to
and
redo
all
the
of-
process each time.
All of them are, applied by Trico Relation Insurance, so, or outside counsel on these.
So it's that one day, the 24th, at 2 PM. Correct?
2 PM?
Yeah, that's either February 5th, anytime during the day or night, or there is no meeting, and that's a Wednesday.
24th to
Wait. No, I can't do the.
February 10th and February 24th are our regular
Right.
meetings.
So we're-
February 10th doesn't work because of other conflicts,
So February 24th is what you're discussing.
Yeah, 2:30.
Yeah,
Commissioner
I
Collins.
prefer the 5th.
Commissioner
I
Collins.
can't do the I can't do the 5th, Campbell.
Okay.
After
I gotta
Friday,
work.
okay.
I'm not independently wealthy as yet. Mark will find a way.
I got it.
I got mouths to feed, man.
What happened on the
He
5th?
cannot do the
I
5th.
gotta work.
So then we'll need, a vote on February 24th at 2:30.
Yeah, now we're talking.
You think we can do them all in 2 hours? 3 in 2 hours?
You can
That's-
always-
that's an hour and a
you can
half.
Always continue it and add.
Right,
a-
okay.
one. Just like we did tonight.
Worst case scenario. We'll get it.
I can read them out. City of Stuart versus North Point Ventures LLC, Behavioral Health Centers LLC versus City of Stuart, and Giant Oil Inc. versus City of Stuart.
Why are you not mentioning the one in the federal court?
That's
Yeah, I-
that our meeting's about.
Yeah.
Because it's not requiring a shade meeting apparently, so. And that's what's up for discussion at the moment.
All right.
Are we done with that item, Mr. Baggett?
Do you need a motion, or is consensus good enough, or
It's a well,
do you feel authorized?
I don't think it's a resolution, but I think it.
we had a resolution in it.
Oh, okay, then the resolution needs to be.
When we're finished, can I ask a
Need a
question?
roll call.
After you
State
do the roll
statute
call?
requires us to put this notice out in advance, so it's better to pass it by resolution, so it's documented.
Would like to vote on it?
So Mayor, I'd like to move resolution number 18, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Commissioner Clark. Any public comment on this item?
Yes, Karen Hall, Yost Road, 1701 Southwest Palm City Road. There is pending litigation, and this has been the problem. Nobody wants to talk about it. You don't want to have a shade meeting. I remember when I was running for commissioner, and Eula Clark was the mayor, and she said, oh, we'll just, after the election, we'll have a sit-down and we'll go through it. Well, that never happened. I don't understand the selective nature, and I have an idea why, because it's pretty damning, and you guys will all find out. I think what they've done before, they try to keep it hidden from the new commissioners, but it won't stay hidden. I have 2 attorneys now, and they've been court-appointed, and so, you will discuss this someday, and you will settle, Mr. Mortel, and you will take accountability. Anyway, love ya. Thanks for your service.
And briefly in response to her
Okay, I was gonna
litigation,
bring that up, so.
the city of Stuart was involved in litigation with the Rudges in 2009, and it went back and forth with litigation, and Mike Durham settled that litigation with the execution of full releases signed by Mrs. Rudge, Mr. Rudge, and the city in 2012. In 2015, the property was sold to an entity called A to Z. A to Z then filed a quiet title action against the Rudges in 2016 and joined the city and the county because we had code enforcement liens. They quickly dismissed the city and the county from the lawsuit when everyone agreed the lien was going to stay. And during the pendency of that litigation, the Rudges filed several motions to join the city or sue the city, but none of them were granted by the court. So the city was never actually joined in another lawsuit with the Rudges since 2012. She's filed several cases in federal court, and the current case she filed, a motion to dismiss was filed by the Trico Council. She sued the state attorney, the county, the city, the judge, and lots of people. And
Mrs.
in any event, she,
I'm sorry.
I don't even know what the tri-code is. He is snowing you, and I'm leaving, because he is sitting there lying.
I'm not trying to upset you, Mrs. Rudge. She filed a lawsuit against the city regarding their property, and that's it. The magistrate dismissed it. And the federal judge entered an order dismissing the lawsuit, and she appealed the federal judge's order of dismissal. The reason there's no shade meeting is because there's no set of facts for us to discuss with you that is confidential. The city's never been a party to the lawsuit since 2012, And as a result, it's not even the appeal of the federal judge dismissal, we don't even know what she's appealing. So at some point, it might get to the point where we have to discuss it with you, and we will, but for now,
We have
that's
a
it.
motion on second to accept the date of Wednesday, February the 24th at 2 PM. Do you have
2:30.
comments regarding that motion?
2:30.
I don't know that that's a Wednesday.
This was for City
That's a
Attorney
Monday.
Lee.
Yeah.
Okay,
said
do you have a
Wednesday.
question,
I did.
Mr. Baggett?
Yes, Mr. Baggett, how many open cases for litigation does the city currently have against them, besides the 3 listed in the agenda packet?
I don't know the answer to that currently.
Okay.
I don't think there's.
It's not a significant number, but
Okay.
There might be a couple other, like a car accident or something like that, but we
Yeah,
can get the list from Trico, but it's
No
short.
worries.
Well,
All
we
right.
just got a new one today, I understand.
Well, not today, no. I was like, I haven't been served with a lawsuit today, but some days I feel like, usually daily, but
Mr. Joe, would you have a comment regarding accepting the date of February 24th?
No, not at all. I thought we were voting.
Thank you. We're going to vote. Let me get the switches going. Oh, Commissioner Clark, I'm sorry, it was you.
No, I don't have any problem with the date. I just had a comment, but it's okay.
For
It was
Yeah,
regard.
I don't think
it
we
was-
want to be
No, we're not gonna get
sidelined
involved.
by
with- yeah,
public comment on
you're right,
the
right,
motion
right,
on the
right.
floor.
For clarification, Monday 24 at 2:30.
2
2:30.
PM.
That would be an
you
hour
want
and
me
a
to
half.
clarify, because I've heard Wednesday, I'm hearing different times,
The
so.
24th is a Monday, because I'm not going to be here on the 24th.
February 24th, Monday.
Do you think you need 2 hours or an hour and a half?
I would say an abundance of caution, but you guys control. If the CRA goes a half hour late, we were late today from the CRA starting this meeting, so I mean, we can continue on, and as Mr. Mortel said, if we run out of time, we could postpone
Three
one of them.
discussions with attorneys, with the 3 different attorneys on 3 different cases?
2 o'clock?
It takes a
I would suggest 2
All right,
o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
But, so,
I relent.
then let's make sure we have the motion correct, then, because we,
Monday, the 24th at 2.
Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
It is. If I could just have Commissioner Clark agree to the amended motion for 2 o'clock on the 24th.
I thought I'd voted for 2 PM.
Yes.
It was
yeah, voted
originally
it.
2:30. They just amended it to 2 o'clock.
No,
Perfect.
2 o'clock, that's what
1,400
I,
hours.
that's what I agreed to, 2 o'clock.
Okay, see no more discussion. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Rich,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes,
Commissioner Giobi,
Yes.
and Commissioner Reed.
Yes.
Okay, as a courtesy to the Vice Mayor, and I wish you'd brought this up during your comment, but.
Yes, I just had one more point before I forgot. Joe Gilio is here. He had sent an email reminding me about the exotic plants at Poppleton Creek project and the presentation and final report that he had issued in April last year. And I guess some of the recommendations are being implemented. The
The intention.
treatment of
The intention of his report was directly related to the maintenance of the perimeters of the ponds in the city of Stuart and the cost of grass removal. The report that he gave us said to spray removal or to use pesticides as a spray on a limited basis. And we've tried to not spray at all, and as a result, you do get some additional growth and the growth gets higher. I read his email, and yes, you could go in and spray right now and remove it, or you could incur going out to bid and having somebody go to all the ponds and do the manual removal. But when David went out to bid on that, I can't remember what the number was, but for the manual removal, it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to do all the ponds. So what happened was we said, let's engage in this study to determine whether or not we should spray.
What percentage of Poppleton Creek did we manually remove that exotic vegetation from?
It was limited to where the sailor men were.
Can I borrow, Joe?
Excuse me. Commissioners, Poppleton Creek, what we did is had 3 75-foot sections of the perimeter of that particular lake. That's the only lake I was concerned about. And On one, the Public Works took out the 75 feet by pulling the weeds and raking them out. Excellent job. The second part, we sprayed. Well, I didn't spray. Your AVC people who do your lake maintenance sprayed. They did an excellent job. The third one, and that's the one we're talking about, is on the south side of the lake, 75 feet long, and I figured it wouldn't work, but you have to try that as an experiment. So I said, don't pull the weeds, don't spray the weeds. Let me put the native plants in there to see if they would overtake the weeds. Well, of course, they did not. And now, over the last 2.5 years, that 75-foot section closest to the road is growing and now starting to seed. And it would be a good idea to remove it. You could either remove it by spraying it or pulling the weeds, because I know that your Public Works did an excellent job the first time, and I hate to see it spread. If I might say this, that AVC, my recommendation to you, which I presume has been implemented, is that they are not spraying the good plants that are appearing on the lake. And that is excellent because you're getting a spread of native vegetation. Not much, but you're getting it. And I did not recommend, well, I did recommend that the same process be applied to your other lakes. But I have nothing to do with it.
So to summarize, if this is accurate, your research showed that planting the natives to help compete with the exotics, and then either spraying or manually removing the exotics to allow the natives to flourish better?
Yes, and
Produce a lot of the positive outcome.
What's happening is AVC, your excellent lake management firm, implemented not spraying the good stuff. And the good stuff is spreading the way I expected it to spread. Not as much, it's only covered maybe 10%. It should cover, in my opinion, somewhere about 80 or 90%.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So-
I think you bring up a good, and I think,
Yeah, let me-
let's have a presentation. We don't really have a means of having a lengthy discussion and back and forth regarding this. If you want to put it on a D&D, that's fine, but let's have a presentation by staff and Milton, and I don't know who
Wait.
does the maintenance.
Can I finish? Joe already did a presentation. I mean,
Right, he already did a
right.
presentation on
The
this.
the next phase is now, how do we want to implement what he found?
You actually adopted the phase and instructed Milton to use ABC, or whatever the company was, and to manage the ponds through that company. We hired them and they're managing
But
them.
holistically, no. What we're doing right now is spot treating the exotics, but we're not planting the natives, and
Let's have them come back.
we're not removing manually the exotics either. So we're sort of partially doing it as is budgetarily
Right.
Let's have him come back
feasible.
and explain what he's doing, and what it costs, and the results they're seeing, and you can speak again at length if the commission chooses, but just tag this on at the end. It's just,
Whatever the pleasure of the.
I just want,
I'm
I
happy
just,
to
I
add
did
this
want
to
to
the March agenda as well.
revisit this conversation because it seemed to kind of fizzle the totality of his recommendations versus just spot treating the
this is
exotics.
why we allow staff to make presentations to us. Exactly, and I think I share your concern for this. This is very important. So I would like an in-depth presentation, and certainly to know what it costs.
So
It
then,
can be very expensive.
so then could we sort of drive you to work with Joe and start to come up with some different options that see what he did come into full holistic?
Why don't we, rather than getting the debate, we can talk about it like individually. I can go over with you what the city's done, what you budgeted, what the resolutions were, what staff is doing, what the company that's managing the lakes are doing. The truth of it is that Joe only looked at one pond as a test study. At one point, it was gonna be Hospital Pond, but then we decided it was gonna be Poppleton Creek Pond. But there are hundreds of ponds in the city that are being managed, and it's just like every road. If I found a pothole on your street, I could say, we need to go in and pave all the roads, but the truth is, we have to prioritize and go through them.
But the point of this, I hear you.
Joe hasn't gone and looked at any of the other ponds.
But the point of the Poppleton Creek study was to project that out onto all the ponds.
Right, and then
It wasn't
he came
just
back
to
with the
study
report.
Poppleton Creek, it was a smaller
Right.
test that would.
And then he came back, gave his report, We presented it to the commission, and the commission authorized Public Works to hire the company and spray on a very limited basis, as little as possible, which meant that he has to let them grow more than just regular, because the more you let even the exotics grow, the less you spray. So the tolerance is, how tight do you want the ponds? Because we were letting them grow, and the sailboat guys couldn't get their sailboats in, if you remember. So then we had to spray to make it so that the sailboats could get in. But if we spray too often, then it looks great, like a golf course, and it's manicured perfectly. But the problem is that cumulative effect is horrible for the water and the environment and the banks of the ponds. So
But
what
this
we've
idea
done-
of planting the natives, planting additional natives, I think is then, if I had to characterize what the missing piece is from what he's recommending versus what we're doing.
That's not what his report says.
It included planting the grasses.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did suggest to plant some additional native plants along the shoreline, number one. Number two, yes, in Poppleton Creek. Number two, what I strongly recommended to the board was to get the data from AVC, which they have to keep, on how much spray they do, how much spray they use in the history of it, so you can see if they're using less or more. That to me is,
Can we have all that together in a
For an
presentation?
update from staff, yeah.
you have that, okay. good.
Versus it just feels like a bit of a stonewall where it's like, that's too expensive, we can't do it, stop. And I'd like to get
That's,
what we can really,
and I don't think the two new commissioners were there for his presentation, so it would be.
I actually was.
Oh, okay, you were both there?
And I need to speak before you close out the meeting?
thank you, Joe.
Commissioner Joby?
Okay, so in line with Mr. Gilio, he had reached out to me, and I'd like to know how we put this on the next agenda to vote on and to review. He's putting in for a grant, which he was looking for what's the term? You're not looking for, no, but the term that you want the city to do. You want the city to, okay. Right, it's a support letter.
Co-sponsor.
Yeah, not so much co-sponsor, but,
With the city, if he had the grant completed and any commissioner presented it to us and said you wanted to write a letter of support for him, we could do that at any meeting. I can put that on February 10th if you want.
okay, so
I
if
just
you
don't know
can,
what
we
it
can
is.
put that on February 10th and we can vote on it. I have information, but I don't think the grant application's completed. You have here a draft.
Time is the essence, because they're meeting, the board, the legislature meets March 4th, and right now, all of our commissioners and senators are up in Tallahassee
Okay.
collecting all
So,
this
Joe,
stuff.
can I suggest that you have that application completed, and it'll be on the next board meeting to approve the,
There's two options I have on that application. One, I have $40,000 to be requested of the legislature, of which $350 goes to Lake Okeechobee Restoration Initiative, not Joseph L. Gilio, sole proprietor. I have many hats, as you guys do, and ladies do. The hat I'm talking to you now is president of Lake Okeechobee Restoration Initiative, a 501c3 that is trying to clean up Lake Okeechobee and clean up St. Lucie River. This proposal that I have is to actually go and look at the pollution history from all the available good data.
Sir, we are not going to go down a whole new road on a grant application, okay?
Okay.
If a commission, as Mr. Martell said, if a commissioner has a specific grant, we were talking about the ponds.
Yeah,
We're done with
I
that.
don't want to conflate the two. I want to make
Yeah.
sure we talk about the ponds first.
And Joe, if you will email me your grant application, I'm happy to put the letter of recommendation you're requesting on the February 10th meeting.
Thank you.
okay, that's really what we were asking.
Okay, if I can
Presentation.
remind the
February 10th,
commissioners,
because the agenda's
these
due
are the
Wednesday.
types of items you bring up during your comments. Okay? You don't save them to the end of the meeting.
Well, we leave
And-
time at the end for discussion.
Right.
And Joe,
And Mr. Gilio
our
was here, he
agenda
wasn't
is
here
due
earlier.
for the February 10th meeting on Wednesday. So if I don't get it by Wednesday, I can't put it on February 10th. Right.
Okay,
No, we don't.
thank you, Joe.
Seeing no other items for our consideration, the meeting is adjourned.